I will never forget the day I saw the widow's life crumble under the king's cruelty. I still see it when I close my eyes, the way she cried, the way her bones stuck out from hunger, the way he laughed. It began when the widow came to our village, broken and alone. Her husband had died in one of the king's wars, leaving her with no home, no land, and no one to speak for her. She had 2 small children, both thin and sickly, and every day, she begged at the edge of the market for food. Our people, who feared the king more than anything, did what they could, giving her scraps, a few coins here and there. But even that was risky. No one wanted to cross the king's path. King Dunlody ruled over our land like a god. His soldiers were his hands, and they would strike anyone who displeased him. No one dared speak against him. His palace, which stood on the hill overlooking our homes, was a reminder of his power, tall, with dark, cold walls. I grew up hearing whispers of how he had once been kind, long ago, before his first wife died. But that was before my time. The king I knew was wicked, and he took what he wanted, never caring about the people. One day, the widow went to the palace to plead her case. I don't know if she was brave or desperate, but I watched as she walked up the long path, her 2 children following behind her like shadows. It was midday, and the sun beat down hot, but no one paid her any mind. People turned away. I don't know why I followed her that day, maybe something inside me wanted to see what would happen. Maybe I felt the same fear she did, even though I wasn't the one begging. She stood before the palace gates, clutching her children's hands, and called out for the king. She was asking for mercy, asking for food, for land, for anything that would save her family from dying in the streets. The king's guards were there, but they did not answer her. Instead, one of them went inside. Time passed slowly as the widow waited, her head bowed. I wanted to leave, but I couldn't move. Something told me that whatever was about to happen would be terrible. Then, the gates opened, and the king stepped out. I had never been so close to him before. He was tall, with a broad chest, and his robe shimmered in the sunlight. His face was like stone, with eyes that could pierce right through you. There was something about the way he looked at the widow that made my stomach twist, like she was nothing, like she wasn't even human. She knelt before him, her voice shaking as she begged. Her children, too weak to stand, sank to the ground beside her. "What do you want from me, woman?" the king asked, his voice cold. I beg you, my king," she stammered. "My children are starving. We have nothing. My husband died fighting for you. Please, give us a small piece of land, some food, anything. We cannot survive like this." The king looked down at her for a long time. Then, he laughed. It was the kind of laugh that made you feel sick, the kind that echoed in your ears long after it stopped. "You come here, begging at my gate, thinking I owe you something." His voice was mocking, cruel. "Your husband fought for me, and now he is dead. That is all he has given me. Why should I give you anything in return?" The widow looked up at him, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Please," she whispered. "For my children." But the king's face only grew harder. "Your husband was a fool to fight for me, and you are a fool to beg me now," he said. "I will give you nothing." He turned to leave, and the widow, in her desperation, grabbed the hem of his robe, pulling herself up to her knees. "Please, my king. I have nothing else," she cried, tears streaming down her face. The king stopped and looked down at her hand gripping his robe. For a moment, everything was silent. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. Then, in one swift motion, the king kicked the widow in the chest, sending her sprawling backward. She hit the ground with a thud, her children screaming as they scrambled to her side. "You dare touch me, you filthy beggar," the king spat. "Take your worthless life and get out of my sight." The guards moved forward then, dragging the widow and her children down the path as she sobbed. No one in the market dared to move or speak. We all just watched, frozen in fear. I wanted to help, but my legs felt like lead. All I could do was stare as they disappeared down the road. The king returned to his palace without another word. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking of the widow, of the way she cried, the way the king's foot slammed into her chest. I could still hear the echo of her children's screams in my head. I didn't know what had happened to them after that. No one did. But the next morning, when I went to the market, the widow was gone. And so were her children.